Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Weekly Walk. I'm your host, Joshua Ingram. It is Monday, January 27th, year of our Lord 2025. And this is episode number 118. All right, so I need your guys' help. I, I don't think I've ever asked for feedback, but I am asking for it now because I'm trying to wrestle something out in my mind, and I need to know. I need the wisdom of counselors to try to come to the truth of the matter. Um, on occasion, I haven't done it in a long time, but I have done it in the past, and I've felt a desire to do it here recently. I will go and stand in front of false churches with a sign that specifically calls out some aspects of that false church. And so like for instance, I'll go in front of a Roman Catholic institution with a sign that says "Call no man father," or I'll go in front of a so-called church with a woman pastor with a sign that says "I suffer not a woman to teach." Um, or I'll go in front of the homosexual churches or the Jehovah Witnesses and call them out for their error. And anytime I go out to do any sort of ministry, I'm always testing my heart. Like why am I doing this? Are my motives pure? Because I'm always fearful of my pride and ego and just other things that can get in the way. And so that's the case here. I'm testing my heart going, why would I do this? What's the purpose? What's my motive? Um And the part that makes it difficult is I'm always aware of impure motives mixed in with the good. There can be really good motives, but I'm always aware of a little bit of pride in me. I can always see it there lurking. I always see this desire to win an argument or desire to prove myself right or whatever the case is. It's pretty small in this case, but in the past, I've been aware of that pride, and that makes me very confused because it's like, okay, knowing that that's there, does that make this an impure thing? Am I doing the wrong thing here? And so I was thinking it through again, like what would be the point? Why would I go out in front of, let's say, for instance, the one I've done the most is the Roman Catholic institution. Why would I go out there with that sign that says "Call no man father"? Um, Popery is antichrist. What's the desire there? What's the reason to do this? Is it biblical? Am I doing something wrong? Am I just being confrontational? And so I'm sitting there. I'm trying to think it through, and it's like, okay, first of all, um, false teaching dishonors God. So the glory of God is at stake here. Like these institutions are claiming to be Christian institutions and are doing things that are completely anti-biblical. And so they're dishonoring God. They're presenting a false image of God to the world. They're I don't know if mocking is the right word, but they're dishonor is the best word I can come up with. They're dishonoring God. And so to resist that seems to me like a good thing. To expose that, to say this is not what God says. This is not what God wants. Um, so that's point one. Point two is there's people being deceived there, and I get it. A lot of people say like there's no friendliness there. It's a bold, aggressive, like it's not gonna benefit anybody. Nobody likes to hear, "Hey, you're wrong." It would seem like that's a wrong approach to it, right? Like if you're walking into the church and you see somebody with a sign that says "Popery is antichrist, call no man father," is that really going to benefit anybody? But my whole thought process is, um, especially in I don't know what to call it, passing evangelism, where it's not people you know, it's not people you're probably ever gonna know. It's just people that you're seeing for 30 seconds. You don't have time to develop a friendship with them, a relationship with them. You don't have time to present the whole gospel. So I feel like the beginnings of the gospel is the fear of the Lord, right? That there has to be a breaking up of the stone ground. I was talking to my pastor and I was explaining it like when you're farming, there's different things that have to be done to the field for the seed to take. Like, and the first step is the rocks got to be pulled out. You got to go through the field and you got to drag out the rocks. You might have to smash them with a big hammer, to get them down to size, to break up that hard ground and to remove those rocks. And that's an aggressive um hard work. It's a hard labor work. It's done with a sledgehammer and big pulley systems to get out, stumps and rocks, and it's laborious. Um, and then once that's done, somebody else comes along and can plow a nice, I don't know what they call it, a furrow, I think, or whatever, a big, whole big straight line in the ground. You plow a line, and then somebody else comes along and puts the seed in it, and then somebody else comes along and waters it, and then somebody else comes along and tends to it, make sure the weeds are gone and prunes it and make sure it's getting the right sunlight. All those things are needed, but they're all different gifts. They're all different callings. And so, like, what I'm doing with the sign is that first part, breaking up that hard, rocky ground. And I feel like that it is aggressive, but it because it's shocking. The ground has been sitting there with that rock in it all along, and all of a sudden it's hit with a sledgehammer to break it up, or the rock is forcefully moved with the oxen. That's aggressive. It's shocking. It's unsettling. And so, like, I feel like if a person's walking into the church and they see that sign, that's going to stick with them. Like, if I was going to my church and I saw somebody with a sign that said, hey, X, Y, and Z is false, I would think about it. I would go into church and I'd be like, I wonder why that guy's out there. What does the church teach on this? What's the truth of this? Why is he, it would cause me to think. And I feel like that's the breaking up of that hollow ground, or that not hollow ground, that hard ground is presenting just a kind of a, in passing, you got 10 seconds to reach somebody, that shocking message. Because once they think that through, they're sitting there thinking about it. If the Lord leads them to a discovery that, yeah, that is true, that the Bible does say, call no man father, that can create a fear and an anxiety in them that is the beginning of wisdom, I think. Like maybe I am in a false church. What is the truth? Like, we don't know what the Spirit's going to do. That's the Spirit's business. How the Spirit draws a person unto himself. But I feel like the sign can be the first step. It's that breaking up of the ground. And then as they research, they're plowing their ground. They're plowing that line in there. And then if the Lord is willing, he'll send a preacher to plant seeds and to water and to grow. He'll follow through. So I feel like I'm doing that first step. I'm breaking up the ground, and people have to be warned. That's they're being deceived. If you're being deceived, the truth will set you free. Yes, I get it. It is an aggressive way to present the truth. We're supposed to speak truth in love and grace. But like I say, when you only have 10 seconds, there's not opportunity for that. It's just, here's the shocking message. Now you go do the research. Now, if somebody comes up to me, of course I'm going to speak to them gracefully and calmly and peacefully, and hopefully get them to take a tract on the subject, or maybe be able to answer questions. I don't know. Usually when I have had people come up to me, they're pretty aggressive, and I just, try to just remain calm and silent and let them spew, let them say their piece. And hopefully they'll go home and they'll think about the message too. So it's why do I do it? they're dishonoring God, and I feel like that has to be exposed. B, people are being deceived, and the truth will set them free. And a shocking message can sometimes break up that hard ground. That's my hope, anyways. So those are the two reasons. And then why do I do it? Well, I feel like God has given me a courage and a boldness to do it, because I feel like not everybody would be comfortable standing out there with a confrontational message, with a confrontational sign, with a harsh rebuke, so to speak. Not everybody would be comfortable doing that. But I feel like God has given me a comfort in that position. There's things in evangelism I'm not comfortable with. Like my pastor goes, door to door, knocking on people's doors, and like that's incredibly uncomfortable to me. I'd be so fearful doing that, to be honest. But to stand with a bold message, I feel like that's the field the Lord has called me into. That's He has made me a hammer. I'm not a scalpel or a watering can or a satchel to carry the seed. We all have different we all have different purposes. We all have different talents. Some of us are made for different things. Um, I feel like I think the Lord has made me a hammer. I'm fit for that. So, um, the glory of God is at stake. I don't want God dishonored, and lies dishonor him. People are being deceived, and they need to be warned. A shocking message breaks up the hard ground. The Lord has fitted me for this purpose. Um, those are the reasons for doing it. Um, God has called us to expose the unfruitful works of darkness. Paul specifically called out false teachers when Peter was preaching a false gospel through his lifestyle, when he wasn't eating with the Gentiles. Did I say Paul? I meant Peter. When Peter was doing that, Paul rebuked him to his face. There was a public rebuke. And so I feel like there is a biblical reasoning for public rebukes like this. Um, Again, there is a gentleness. There is the message is harsh. You know, um, you brood of vipers is a harsh message, but that's the word being harsh. Me personally, I'm going to be gentle, and I'm going to be kind. When people come to me, if they come up and talk to me or whatever, even when I'm not confronted. Excuse me, I'm still getting over a cold or a flu or something. Something had me sick for it's almost been 2 weeks now, 10 days. But I lost my train of thought there. Just the gentleness. Oh, most of the time, 99.9% of the time, I just stand there silently, with a solemn look on my face, just with the sign. And like I say, hopefully people read it, and they'll that shocking message. I don't think you can read that and not think about it. You're going to go into that church service and you're going to be thinking about it. Yes, it might make you angry, but it's going to cause you to think. And if the Holy Spirit wills, if the Holy Spirit moves upon you, he's going to lead you into an investigation. He's going to lead you into all truth. Um, so I think there's biblical justification for doing this. Um, but am I wrong? Is it wrong to go and protest, so to speak, silently protest against false churches? Is it wrong to go with a sign exposing false teaching? Is it unbiblical? Is there something? Am I missing something here? Because, like I say, that I do. I don't have a problem with confrontation. A lot of times I enjoy confrontation. So that makes me kind of think what if this is just that aspect of me? What if this is just that natural part of me? And I don't think it is. Because I am fearful when I go out there. I'm full of trembling. It's scary to make yourself look like an insane fool standing there with a sign. And it's scary to think, man, somebody might come up and like physically assault me. What if somebody stabs me or throws, there's been people who've had acid thrown in their face, and that's scary. And what do I do when they call the cops? Because the times I've had the cops called on me have been in front of false churches. um, how do I address that? How do I remain calm and peaceful with the police officer? Do I try to fight for my rights? Do I try to say, hey, this is a constitutional right. I'm not doing anything wrong, officer. Um, so I always am prayerfully fearful and trying to be humble and gentle. Um, just, is it wrong? Is it wrong to do this? Like, again, am I missing something? Am I not seeing the picture clearly? I would really appreciate your feedback on this. Send me a message. Um, I think, can you comment on Spotify? If not, find me on YouTube, King Ram 417, or Rumble, same thing, King Ram 417, or find me on Facebook, uh, same name, King Ram 417, or just search for Joshua Ingram in Wisconsin. Um, yeah, I guess that's all I got. I'm just looking for some feedback. I'd appreciate it. So I saw someone post on Facebook two different quotes from a so-called pastor. I don't know anything about the guy. Um, I think I had heard his name before, like in passing. So I guess he's of some reputation, or he has some sort of fame. But I guess I'd never looked into him, never read anything of his, never heard any of his sermons or whatnot. But it's a guy called Doug Wilson. I guess he's from, I want to say Colorado is what I think somebody told me. Um, but the quotes were, one, he has this, both were just this kind of, I guess the best way to say it is chauvinistic, kind of this disgusting, perverse, misguided perception of masculinity. Like he had said something about women wanting to be possessed, and treating women like baubles. And I actually had to look up what bauble is, and I guess it's a little trinket of little worth, like a nothing little trinket, like, I guess something you might buy at like a truck stop, or a little gift shop, a little 99 cent figurine or snow globe or something that you put on your shelf. That's what a bauble would be. And so for him to refer to women as a bauble, it was like, man, this guy says he's a pastor. I think he says he's a pastor. I don't know anything about him, but it was just a really off-putting statement. It was like, man, that's a disgusting statement. And then his other one, I won't even repeat it. It was sexual in nature, and it was just gross. And it's like, I'm always uncomfortable when pastors get a little bit too graphic in regards to sexuality. Yes, sexuality is a topic addressed in the scriptures, and so we ought to address it. But I don't think you should go into details. I don't think there should be, the scriptures speak about it in plain, matter of fact. Here's its function, here's its purpose. It's just straightforward, factual, no nonsense. There's no romanticizing of it. Um, because then it becomes a little pornographic, and it just becomes uncomfortable. And so I never like it when even some of the pastors I like to listen to, sometimes I feel like they go a little bit too far in their, not that they're being perverse or pornographic, but Sometimes they speak about it in these glowing romantic terms, and it's like, that should be private. I'm of the mindset where I don't even believe in public displays of affection with married couples. I feel like all your sexual intimacy should be a private affair. That's not something that should be done publicly. And I'm not just opposed to that for um uh what's is prudity, is that a word, for prudeness sake? It's not just for that. I also, as a single man and a person who has had many single friends and observed single life, I know that single people can become uncomfortable. Um it, it even though a married couple might not be doing it, it almost feels like you're rubbing it in their face. And so for the sake of that, not to be a stumbling block to somebody, I also feel like public displays of affection should be avoided. What goes on between you and your spouse is between you and your spouse. That should be a private thing. And so anyways, I'm getting way off topic. Just his statement was crude. It was something that should not be said from the pulpit. It goes beyond what the scriptures say about the topic. It's a worldly view. It's a again a chauvinistic, prideful view, and it was repulsive. So I saw those two statements, and I was just like, man, that's so gross. What a terrible attitude to have, and call yourself a pastor. So I brought it up to my brothers. I'm like, hey, who is this guy? And one of my brothers mentioned that he's a Christian nationalist, that he believes in Christian nationalism. And so I don't know if this is a tenet of Christian nationalism or if it just so happens to be that the Christian nationalists I've come across all have this same type of attitude. So I don't know if it's fair to put it under the umbrella of Christian nationalism, but I've experienced this bravado amongst some Christians. This exaggerated, extreme version of masculinity that's very anti-Christian, and perhaps it needs to be addressed by leaders of the church. I don't know how widespread this is, but I've come across it a few times now. And it's so off-putting. It's so gross. It's so um, antithetical to the Christian attitude. And I had heard Pastor MacArthur one time say, and I think he's right for the most part. I will put one caveat on it at the end. But I heard him say that, well, I guess he's right because he does say sometimes. So he doesn't make a blanket statement. But he says sometimes when we, and this is just a very loose paraphrase, going off a memory of something that I heard him say one time in passing. So forgive me if this is not verbatim, but I think the sentiment is correct. He said that sometimes um, we encounter, I don't remember if he said a heresy or a false teaching or an ideology or whatever, but an extreme false idea. We encounter something that is extremely wrong. That's a um obtuse twisting of the scriptures. It's something that's far off from what is true. And we encounter that in society, that or in the church. We encounter this false idea, this false teaching that's so extreme that there's a tendency for the rebuttal against it to be equally as extreme in the other direction. And another brother of mine gave me a Martin Luther quote where Luther said essentially the same thing MacArthur was saying, that in trying to not go off one side of the ledge, we sometimes go off the other side. And That's true, and I think that's what's happening here. I think there's an extreme in society today of effeminized men. There's a weakness of masculinity. There's a sissified um, and everybody knows what I'm talking about. You see it portrayed all over the media. It's celebrated in society where men act like women, or men are uh, overly emotional and soft, and just it's a perversion of what men are supposed to be. And so what I think has happened is that these people, whether it's a tenet of Christian nationalism or it's just a group of people, and the ones that I've encountered happen to be in Christian nationalism, but whatever the case is, these people, they see this extreme, effeminized, weak, soft men in society. And so their response is equally as extreme, and they go off the edge in the other direction, and they portray this ultra masculinity that's based in worldliness, not in biblical manliness. It's this idea of men should be uh, big and strong, and we should be weightlifters, and we should drink whiskey, and we should smoke big cigars, and we should shoot guns, and we should cuss at each other, and we should just, we should be no nonsense ruffians. That's that attitude. And that's what this Doug Wilson is coming across like. This machismo, this prideful, arrogant, uh, worldly masculinity that they're masking and clothing in a shroud of Christianity, saying that this is biblical, this is how men should be, and they're wrong. They're just, that's all there is to say about it, is they're wrong. They're just as wrong as the effeminate, soft, weak, sissified man. They've gone in the opposite direction to the extreme, and fallen off the edge in the other direction. The truth of the matter is, yes, biblical manliness is courageous. It's bold. It's the biblical man says, I will serve God no matter what, even if nobody else is with me. I will stand against the entire tide of humanity, um, for the sake of righteousness, for the sake of doing what is right. I will stand. I will not be afraid. I will go into the lion's den if need be. I will go to the stake and be burned. But that, it's not a puffed out chest, head held high attitude. That's an internal determination. That's courage in the inner man. It's clothed in humility. It's clothed in gentleness, in meekness, in compassion, in love. That's what true Christianity is. True Christianity doesn't say, "Oh, if you try to steal from me, I'll shoot you in the face." That is a perverse, evil, prideful, arrogant idea of masculinity. The real man, the biblical man, um, stands in the face of danger, will put his body between himself and his family, but will also desire the salvation and safety of the person doing him wrong. It's not a, I'll kill you for wronging me. It's, I will plead with you to turn and be saved. I will not fear what you can do to me. But I'm also not I'm gonna not want to hurt you. It's, um, what's another way to say it? Man, it's so prevalent in today's society. Like the patriotic movement is just it's the same thing. So I guess that's what it is. It's this It's the patriotic, and that hence the title, I guess, Christian nationalism. It just occurred to me, duh, that's what it is. That's in its name. It's this patriotic idea wrapped in Christianity. It's this patriotic manliness um, lived out by a Christian man, and they it just doesn't mix. It's not meant to be that way. Um, a Christian man says, "Here's what I believe," and even if the whole world stands against me, ridicules me, threatens me, um, I don't care. I'm going to stand. I'm going to stand for truth. I'm going to stand on principles. I've drawn a line in the sand saying, here it is. True biblical masculinity is black and white. That's what it is. People always like to say that we live in a gray world. You know, there's no real black and white. There's no truth and error. There's just various degrees of gray, and that's it's a lie. True biblical masculinity recognizes the black and white of truth and wrong, error. It recognizes the black and white of good and evil, and it will not cross that line no matter how much pressure is put upon him. But it doesn't lash out at the evil. It doesn't threaten the evil. It doesn't, the scriptures say we do not overcome evil with evil, but we overcome evil with good. That's a bad. It's Romans 12:21. If you want to look it up, I don't remember exactly how it says. Be not overcome with evil, but overcome evil with good. And we look at other scriptures like love your enemies, and if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him a drink. In so doing, you'll heap coals of fire upon his head. It's, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. Give place to vengeance, to turn the other cheek. If somebody steals your cloak, give him your jacket also. That's not a cowardice laying down to evil. That's saying I'm going to do what God tells me to do, and I'm not going to fear the consequences. I'm not going to fear what man can do to me. If Nebuchadnezzar tells me to bow down to this statue, I'm going to boldly, but with honor and reverence to the king. I'm not going to rebel and take up arms against him. I'm going to peacefully say to him, sir, I cannot bow to your statue. And then when he looks at you and he says, well, you better reconsider, I'm going to throw you into the flames, the consequences don't matter to the man of God. That's the boldness and the courage that says, well, do what you must, but I won't bow to your statue. For God has told me that, I'm only going to bow to him. That's the stance. It's not, if you threaten to throw me in that fire, I'm gonna take up this spear and drive it through your heart. That's evil. And this attitude from these Christian nationalists or whatever they may be is so proud. It's so arrogant. It's so boastful. It's so haughty and high-minded and puffed up. It's all these things the scriptures tell us we're not to be. We are not to be proud. We're not to be haughty. We're not to be high-minded. We are to be lowly. That doesn't mean that there's not courage and boldness. The lowly, it's ultimate courage. I've always said, and I've never been able to properly explain this to people enough to get them to grasp it, but to take up arms or to fight back is cowardice. It's not manliness, it's cowardice. We have if God tells me to stand and be silent in the face of my enemy, like Jesus was, courage obeys. Courage stands there even when the mob is coming with the torches and the flames. Courage stands Courage doesn't. Fear says, uh-oh, I better take things into my own hands. A fear response is fight or flight. Either one of those is a fear response. Uh, Running away is not the only act of cowardice. Defending self is also an act of cowardice when you've been told not to. So this and then the whole the drinking whiskey and the taking up arms, it's just so worldly. It's I loathe it. I hate it. I'll just say that. I hate it when I see it because it's repulsive. It's disgusting. And I see through it. I see that it's really scared little boys responding to their fear in a worldly machismo, a worldly bravado. It's worldliness and pride and arrogance coming out of a root of fear. And I say, I see right through it, and so it disgusts me. It's don't be afraid. Just do what is right, which sometimes means standing silently and being killed for not bending the knee. It's Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego could have fought back. The Lord told them through the scriptures, through the Old Testament, through what they knew about the Lord, that they're not to bow down to anybody but God. They knew that. And so there's the mandate. Don't bow. The king comes and says, bow to my statue. Now fear could come along and they could run, or they could fight, or they could be in boldness and courage, stand on the word of God and say, no, we will not bow, and accept the consequences. I will accept the consequences of doing what's right. If the Lord tells me X, Y, and Z in the scriptures, and there's a external threat against me to disobey that command, courage and boldness stands, but the humility and the gentleness of the Christian man does not respond in violence. If that makes sense. I think I made my point. I'll just start repeating myself, but I loathe this teaching, this attitude that I've seen now from the Christian nationalists. It is a repulsive thing and ought not to be done amongst Christian men. All right, that's all I got for you guys today. As always, I truly appreciate you listening. I love you, and Lord willing, we'll talk to you next time.